It was the year 2011, and I was going through one of the toughest times of my life emotionally. I was dealing with personal issues that seemed to have no end in sight, and it was taking a toll on me. Unfortunately, my emotions were not contained within my personal life, but it spilled over into my work life as well. I had become an unpleasant person to work with, and I knew it. I was short-tempered, irritable, and not someone people wanted to be around. Despite this, I was promoted to the position of county sheriff. Little did I know at the time, but this promotion would change my life in ways I could never have imagined. Although I was struggling with my emotions, I was grateful for the promotion. It was an opportunity to grow professionally, and I knew it came with a great deal of responsibility, despite my personal struggles. I was determined to make the most of this opportunity and prove to myself and my colleagues that I was capable of handling the new role. The promotion was a glimmer of hope in an otherwise challenging year, and I was determined to rise to the occasion. One Tuesday morning, shortly after starting my new role as county sheriff, we received a call from a man who lived on the outskirts of town. He was complaining about loud noises coming from his backyard. He was convinced it was a mountain lion or some other dangerous animal, but he couldn't be sure. He refused to go out and check himself, fearing he might get hurt. As my assistant listened to the man's panicked voice on the other end of the line, a sense of unease settled in. This wasn't a routine call, and the situation sounded potentially dangerous. As my assistant spoke to the panicked man on the phone, they realized that he wasn't going to hang up anytime soon. My assistant asked if I could take over the call, but I was hesitant. My emotions had been getting the best of me lately, and I didn't want to make the situation worse. However, since my other coworkers were busy, I reluctantly agreed to take the phone. As I listened to the man's frantic voice, my short temper began to flare up. I tried to shut him down, thinking he was overreacting, but he wasn't having it. He continued to speak rapidly, describing the noises he had heard in his backyard. My irritation grew, and I snapped at him, telling him to calm down. But that only seemed to make things worse. The man became more agitated, and I realized that my approach was not working. I took a deep breath and tried to compose myself. I asked the man to slow down and describe the situation more clearly. Gradually, I was able to get a better sense of what was happening. Despite my initial reluctance, I knew that it was important to take the call seriously and do what I could to help. The man's panicked voice continued to fill the room as he requested immediate help from animal control. I notified the appropriate authorities and placed the phone on speaker while I continued with my paperwork. The man's anxious voice still managed to cut through the sounds of the office, his words painting a vivid picture of his fears. Despite my initial frustration, I realized that the man was genuinely frightened and in need of help. I did my best to stay patient and listen carefully to his description of the situation. With each passing moment, his voice grew more frantic, and I could sense the urgency of the situation. The caller's tone suddenly turned furious as he reported hearing banging sounds. Before I could ask any questions, he fell silent, only to come back on the line a few minutes later, sounding out of breath. He explained that he had attempted to close his shed from the outside and had inadvertently trapped the animal in his garage. Despite my initial skepticism, I understood the caller's urgency and relayed the information to the animal control team. As a law enforcement officer, it was important to take all reports seriously and respond accordingly. I reassured the caller that help was on the way and urged him to stay clear of the garage until the animal control team arrived. He was sure testing my patience, but my badge demanded me to do this, and I could not say no. Luckily, within a few minutes, animal control got to the location. After I ended the call, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The caller's fear was palpable, and I couldn't imagine the terror he must have been experiencing. As I waited for updates from the animal control team, I hoped that they would be able to resolve the situation quickly and safely. The animal control officer called me directly shortly after my conversation with the frantic caller. "Get over here immediately, Sheriff. You have to see this on your own," he said urgently. I could hear screaming sounds in the background, and the officer's voice sounded increasingly concerned. My heart rate quickened as I grabbed my keys and rushed to my car. As I drove toward the caller's location, my mind raced with possibilities. What could be making those horrifying sounds? Was it a wild animal, or something even more sinister? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was heading into something dangerous and unpredictable. As I arrived at the location, I saw the frantic caller pacing back and forth, screaming and shouting about how the government was evil and how this was one of their conspiracy plans I ignored his ranting and turned my attention to the animal control officer, who looked shaken to the core. "What is it?" I asked, my heart racing with anticipation. The animal control officer turned to me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "That's the problem," he said. "We have no idea what creature is locked in that shed." My mind reeled as I tried to process what I was hearing. How could they not know what animal was trapped inside? As we stood there in silence, the screams from inside the garage grew louder and more desperate. Whatever was in there was not going down without a fight. It was clear that we needed to act fast before things got even more out of hand. I followed the animal control officer to the locked shed, the crashing sounds inside growing louder as we approached. It was like something was bouncing off the walls from within. As we got closer, the noise suddenly stopped, making me feel like whatever was trapped inside knew we were coming. The animal control officer motioned for me to look through a crate placed above eye level to peer through the window. As I stood up on the crate and looked inside, I was met with a terrifying sight. The creature staring back at me had glowing human-like eyes with a broad, sharpened-toothed smile. Its body was like a strange hybrid of a dog and a deer, but it looked completely wrong. The thing was so close to the window that its breath fogged up the glass. The animal control officers seemed hesitant to get any closer, leaving me frozen in shock and fear. As soon as I saw the creature through the window, I jumped down from the crate and backed away from the shed. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I asked the animal control officers to deal with it. It was their job anyways, I thought to myself. However, deep down I was terrified and wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. I didn't want to be anywhere near that thing. Without waiting for a response from the animal control officers, I quickly made my way to the car and drove back to the station. As I drove, my mind was racing with thoughts of what I had just seen. I couldn't shake the image of those glowing human-like eyes and the creature's twisted deer-like body. I knew that I would need to report this to my superiors and figure out what was going on. But for now, all I wanted to do was put as much distance between myself and that shed as possible. A few years later, when I was in a better headspace, I couldn't shake off the memories of that bizarre creature. I decided to contact the animal control officer who was with me that day to ask about the animal. After some hesitation, he told me that some of his superiors had taken over the case and told them never to mention the animal again. It seemed odd that something so strange and dangerous could just be swept under the rug. I asked for more details, but the officer refused to give any and said that he was not at liberty to discuss the matter further. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that something was not right. The fact that the animal control officer was reluctant to talk about it and that the higher-ups had taken control of the situation left me with a sense of unease. What was that creature? Why was it so dangerous? And why was it kept hidden from the public? As I pondered these questions, I couldn't help but wonder if there were more secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered.